Welcome, people, to Amsterdam Talk, Season 3, Episode 11. And tonight, I bring, a special guest with me. I bring author. Episode 11. Oh, and tonight, and they tell me about feedback, and I do feedback. Episode 11. I bring profound author and speaker, Miss Kimberly Clark. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, really good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Before we get started, tell us about yourself.
Okay,
Your
well,
author, what books or things in that nature.
okay, absolutely. Well, the title of my book is Stuck Between Pleasure and Pleasing God. It's found on Amazon. It's a memoir about my life in the Navy, as well as enduring a military sexual trauma, and then coming home back to the States because I was stationed in Guam, dealing with addiction and alcoholism for about 10 years, right? And so today I have almost 2 years sober. I'm a motivational speaker, a trauma informed care consultant, as well as certified peer support specialist, which is a whole bunch of words just to say I help people recover.
Okay. Okay, but before we even get into that, I just wanted to touch bases what's like really big in the news. So I guess we could call this a new segment, brother, for real current events. So we'll start the show. So we have Shanquilla Robinson, who was murdered down in Cabo, Mexico by her so-called friends. That they said it was supposed to be alcohol poison, but when the federales, the authorities got to her, they felt like it was trauma. So basically, it was a head and spine trauma. But the group said that she suffered from alcohol poison, and this was the very first day they got down there. So I'm not understanding it. And basically, what I want to say is, how would you perceive that, Miss Clark, right there? If somebody's telling you it was alcohol poison, but there's severe head and neck trauma and spine trauma.
I mean, I would immediately assume that that's a lie. It was definitely something else going on. I've been seeing a little bit, I've been seeing it all over Facebook, but I haven't really read a lot of the facts that go with it, other than the fact that, of course, the report that said it was alcohol poisoning. I seen the video that surfaced where she was, fighting, and well, she wasn't even fighting. Matter of fact, somebody was fighting her because she wouldn't, throw any hits or anything like that. But I would definitely, have my ears up. Something happened to that young lady, and I hate that it took her life.
Yeah, and that's crazy. So what it basically say is you got to watch who you call your friends, because unfortunately, this generation is actually videotaping this fight and knowing that somebody's been physically hurt. But if you see a person not trying to fight back, just break it up. That's plain and simple. Now, if they were fighting
Right.
back and forth, that's just something different. But one person's not fighting, then it is totally different. But that's what I just wanted to bring out there to those that's watching about that, about Miss Shanquilla Robinson. But now back to our guest right here. You say that you were dealing with uh, substance abuse. What substance were you dealing with?
My drug of choice was alcohol, but I dealt with cocaine, crack cocaine, pills, methamphetamines at one point. Pretty much everything I could get my hands on, except IV drug use.
Heavy drug use. And this was all when you stated at the beginning that you were in the military.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the alcohol started in the military, but the drugs didn't start till I got home. But it was almost immediately when I got home and got a medical discharge. I was almost immediately, introduced to crack cocaine by family members.
A family member. What city, if we can ask?
Oh yeah, I'm completely open and transparent. Shreveport, Louisiana.
Oh, okay. You're from Louisiana to boot. Okay, Shreveport. I
Yeah,
get it. So you came home. So you said, how many years did you do in the service?
I did too. You know what? I wanted to do 20 years, right? I wanted to retire from it, but after the MSC, after the sexual trauma, you know, um, I tried to commit suicide, and they diagnosed me with PTSD, and they made me get a medical discharge.
It was sexual trauma inside the military.
inside the military by an officer, what was supposed to be a friend of mine.
So so this was bought like rape?
Yeah, it was rape.
Rape in the military. Okay, and there was no one you could report. I mean, I guess because it was fellow officers, you couldn't report it.
Oh no, 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 no. There was a report and everything. There was even trial. Actually, I didn't tell anyone at first, but I ended up telling someone about it. Like maybe 2 weeks later. Um, and that person, which is still a good friend of mine today, he went and confronted the guy in front of everybody in the barracks, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that got back to my chain of command, and they had to do something about it. And so they started an investigation. I ended up having to talk to NCIS every day for a few months, right? They had me wear a wire to go talk to the dude to try to get him confessed to confess. They had me call him with the phone tapped to try to get him to confess, right? But that was, he never confessed. He said everything but that. He even apologized to me, but never
Mm.
actually said, "Hey, I did this to you," right? And so, and then there was drinking involved at the party, and I can
Mm-hmm.
only remember flashes of things. And so, because there was alcohol involved, after the trial process or whatever, he ended up getting away with it. The charges were dropped and everything. So, but yeah, there was
Mm.
trial. There was all that NCIS and all the works.
So out of all of that, how did the trial end up?
Yeah, he got away with it. He got away with it. At the beginning of trial, like I was saying, I was stationed in Guam. So after that happened, they wouldn't let me deploy anymore. See, we would
Okay.
deploy for like a few months at a time, and we would go places like Australia, Thailand, Saipan, Singapore, places like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they wouldn't let me get it back on the ship no more because I guess the counselor they made me go talk to could sense the suicidality, and so they wouldn't let me deploy. Um, and I ended up, trying to commit suicide. I had a suicide attempt. I took like 145 pills one day, just trying to end it. And a friend of mine found me in my barracks and saved my life that night. And not too long after that, they medevaced me from Guam to San Diego, and
Mm.
that's when my medical discharge began to happen.
Wow. So okay, so this was all strength from the trauma of this was like I guess after the trial when the verdict came, you just decided to say you wanted to end it all.
Oh no, this was when they found out. Like, this is when my chain of command found out about what happened, and they knew they had to do something about it. And at that point, I knew that everybody there found out what happened to me. In my mind, I was thinking like they were gonna look at me different, that everybody was gonna feel sorry for me. Um, I don't know. I just didn't want to be treated differently, and at the same time, like I didn't know how to deal with what just happened to me. I was a virgin. When that happened, I grew up, in the church and the Word of God, and I wanted to give myself away biblically, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what my plans were, to wait till I got married, and I was steadfast on that. And He took that chance away from me. He took that choice away from me, and so I just, yeah, I didn't know it. I didn't know what to do with myself. So they sent me to San Diego. I didn't, like I said before, like I didn't want to leave the Navy. I did not want to leave, but they made me leave
Mm.
after I was diagnosed with PTSD.
Mm. So they made you leave.
Hmm.
So you went. So you were in San Diego. So they sent you back to San Diego. Then they sent you back to Louisiana.
Right. Correct. Correct.
And so all of this going on from the PTSD. So now you back in Shreveport. So now you're trying. I'm not saying you're trying, but I guess you're trying to. What's the word I'm looking for? Suppress the trauma.
No, that's exactly it. I was trying to suppress. I was trying to cope. I was trying to cope any way that I could. I didn't want to feel the way that I was feeling. Um, but I mean, at that point, I didn't know much about drugs because I grew up kind of sheltered, away from
Mm-hmm.
the world kind of we weren't allowed to do parties and stuff like that. And yeah, I didn't know much about drugs or anything other drug life because I'm not hood. I'm country. I'm real country. Like I grew up in Shreveport for a few years of my life, but I'm born and raised in Castro, Louisiana, which is a town like our population is about less than 1,000 people. So that's where I was born and raised. And
Okay,
so
in that town, that's like everybody knows everybody.
right, everybody's related in some kind of way. Yeah.
Okay. So you came back, so you suppressed it to run away from the trauma. So was it just um I guess was the family member that gave it to you, he would just say, "Hey, try this," or you were curious about it, or how did that go?
A mixture of both. I came home, from the military. I was broken, full of fear, looking for any way to cope. And I went out partying with my aunt, my cousin, and my cousin's boyfriend. And we ended up in my cousin's boyfriend's house. And so my aunt, my cousin, my cousin's boyfriend, they were in the kitchen doing something off of a can, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
and of course I'm a country. I didn't know what they were doing. And the house that we were at didn't have any electricity. We had been out all day, drinking, riding, listening to music. And it was raining, and I think my cousin's boyfriend had a warrant or something, and he was trying to get
Mm-hmm.
off the road. It was just this whole thing. But anyway, yeah, we got to that house, and they were doing something. The kids just smoking something off of a can, and I could see the lighter flickering, flickering, flickering. I'm like, what they got going on in there? You know what I'm saying? So I went and I asked my aunt. I'm like, hey, what's that? And she was like, baby, this is crack cocaine. And like the way she introduced me to it was like, she was introducing me to a person. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had the audacity to ask, can I try it? And at first she was like, nah, I don't want no parts of that. But then when she found out that, I had money, it was kind of different. And so they let me smoke it off of a can. At first I put up to my nose because I didn't know what I was doing. And as soon as I hit the can for the very first hit ever, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
felt numb. I finally didn't feel anything, and it was the feeling I've been searching for. And I just felt good. And so I truly believe that I was hooked from the very beginning. And
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, that same night when the high was coming down,
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember all of this, so this is what people told me that happened. So apparently I had like a knife or a screwdriver or something. I was in the middle of the road. It was like, I don't know if it was a state of psychosis or what, but I was in the middle of the road and the policeman came and he saw me. He was like, trying to calm me down, like, hey, it's okay, whatever you're going through, because like I said, it was a small town, so everybody knew that's that girl came home from the military, you know.
Okay.
And so yeah, I went to the hospital that night and was going to ended up getting out of the hospital, um, and starting to look for it on my own.
Mm. So now it was
Yeah,
basically start looking for it on your own because I guess it is the old saying you was trying to chase that high, that feeling that you got that first time, and which nobody ever gets again. So you
that's
basically
true.
just chasing that first high, and people think you can get high again like that. You can never get high like that again. So
No.
you leave the hospital. So now you start to go purchasing on your own. So
Hmm.
what starts to happen once you start to purchase it on your own now?
Um, I knew who to talk to and who not to talk to, right? I knew,
Mm-hmm.
some people who sold it, but would tell my family. So I kind of I tried to avoid them, right? And so I would go end up at trap houses, um, with another cousin because I didn't want to go alone. I didn't want it
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be taken advantage of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to feel like an addict. So I kind of took somebody with me, I guess, for accountability, protection, and just to reassure me, hey, but just because you're doing this don't mean you're a crackhead. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to feel
Right.
like that at that point. But the word got back to my brother. My brother lives in Arkansas, Little Rock,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
which is like a 5, 6 hour drive. And so he found out. He immediately came home that same night at like midnight that night and did an
Mm.
intervention with a few of my cousins. They did an intervention. You know, he told me he loved me. He didn't want to see me go down that path. He was extremely so mad at my aunt, you know, for introducing me to it. And I went to rehab not for the first time, not soon after that in Temple, Texas.
Mm. So
Yeah.
was it just a one time in Temple, Texas, or it was like, because some people go and they check out and they go back and then they just keep going back and forth. So it was just a one time.
Oh God, no. I had a 10-year addiction. I went, you know, to what about maybe 11 or 12 different rehabs. I went to
Mm.
psychiatric units at least 34, 35 times.
Mm.
At around the last maybe 5 years of my addiction, I found myself in and out of jail, right? All directly related, you know, to addiction and alcoholism. There was, man, just in and out, in and out. And one of the things, the main things that like that kept me bound, that kept me out there was relationships, right? Because
Right.
like I had some daddy issues growing up. My dad wasn't around. When he was around,
Mm-hmm.
he was always barefoot with a bottle of WL Weller. He was always drunk, you know, or
Mm.
drinking. And so I had those issues. I had the self-esteem issues, you know, from being called ugly or too fat or too something. So I didn't like me. I didn't love me either, right? And so I had those
Mm.
issues. And so what I would always pick people because they liked me or because they showed me some attention. I just, you know, wanted to get love in any way that I could. And
Right.
so, yeah. And so, me look for love, wanting love. I went to. Sorry about that. I went to. One moment. So I'm sorry about that. So
It's
I
fine.
went to. Okay. Okay. So I went. I started going to this Narcotics Anonymous meetings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I met this older guy. For some reason, I had these things with older guys. It ain't for some reason, but because of my dad. So I had this thing with older guys. Met him. He became my sponsor, and
Mm-hmm.
like I basically, you know, kind of fell in love with him. He was, at,
Mm.
but like you're not supposed. A female is only supposed to get a female sponsor, and a male is only supposed to get a male sponsor. I didn't know that at the
Mm-hmm.
time, but he did, right?
Right.
So yeah, so he completely took advantage of that. He completely took advantage of like my weaknesses, my anxieties, my fears. He took advantage of all of that because, you know, I was so vulnerable. And yeah, like I thought that we were in a relationship. I had like maybe 4 or 5 months clean at this time. I thought we were
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship. You know, he made it seem like we was in a relationship, and then like come to find out, you know, like he was married the whole time, and he would like pick
Mm.
arguments. Yeah, right. He would pick arguments with his wife, so his wife wouldn't come to the meetings when I showed up to the meetings, so we wouldn't meet. I mean, like really manipulative stuff like that, you know. And so, so yeah, I ended up finding out he had a wife. I was completely devastated. I was so hurt. I went and called some of the other women that was at the meeting too, you know, to
Mm-hmm.
kind of get some support, to get some help, to get to
Right.
get some support and get some help. And they turned on me. Like they was like, "Oh no, we don't want to talk to you." I mean, like he had that much power in the meeting over people to where, you know, they didn't want to have anything, even though I didn't do anything wrong, right? I was the one that was used and manipulated. You know, they chose his side, and so they just took me on an even downward spiral. And
Mm.
over the course of 10 years, like that's what was my downfall. Relationships, it was always with older men. because of those daddy issues, right? And it was always with narcissists or people who were manipulative or people who took advantage of me or used me for money or something like that. It was always in that arena.
Mm. So you said you were in and out of jail. Was it you going in and out of jail because you were doing things to get the drugs, or you just were just going to jail because you had possession?
A little bit of both. Some of it, one time was domestic with my ex husband.
Hmm.
Um, he would he would know my triggers, right? He would, you know, like at first it was the love bombing, in the beginning stages of it. Then it was like the to let me see how far we can take her. I remember being about 7 months clean when I met him, and I'm telling him like, "Hey, I'm a totally different person when I'm using. Like, I don't want to ever be that person again." And I remember him saying, "I mean, I want to meet her. I want to meet her." Like, kept saying that but I thought he was joking, right? There were
Mm.
so many red flags that I ignored because again, I wanted love. Like I wanted to be wanted, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah, he was just completely manipulative. He would, eventually go get the drugs for me and bring it back. Um, Supposedly because he didn't want me to leave home, right? But
He didn't use.
he was alcoholic. He was
Okay.
alcoholic, but drugs, no. No.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he would be, emotionally abusive, calling me stupid and retarded. And I mean, just all these just nasty words, right? Or I've had better than you. I can do better than you. And because he's older, he was 30 years my senior, and he had did, 20 years in Angola, right? And so,
Mm.
uh, to him, he was just this, stand up guy back in the day or whatever, because he used to be a drug dealer, and that's what he went to jail for selling drugs. And so he was like,
Hmm.
oh man, I used to have all kind of different women, look way better. I mean, just all kind of stuff feeding into my low self esteem, feeding me like making sure that I know like he's the prize. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Right.
lucky to have him. I gotta keep him around. He would do stuff like that. Also physically abusive. We would fight. um, he would hit me, I would defend myself. There were times I hit him too. And
Mm.
so the whole relationship was just extremely, extremely toxic, extremely toxic. And then, I found out about his sexuality as well. Um, at first, I would hear things, in the street because I didn't grow up in Shreveport, not all my life,
Mm.
but he did. And I would hear stuff, about him being bisexual and stuff like that. And when I tell you, like, that was the most devastating thing ever, because I'd already felt ugly. I'd already felt like,
Right.
I looked like a man. I'd already had all these daddy issues. I already had all this low self esteem. And for him to, be bisexual and not tell
Hmm.
me and not admit that to me, I felt like, man, do I look like a man? Is that why he want me? Or why is he with me? Is he using me, what I'm saying, for money? Because he had like maybe a part-time job or whatever whenever we first met. And
Mm.
so that's how low and how bad that made me feel. And when I tell you I seen all the red flags in the beginning, like all the femininity, and I mean just all of the signs were there, but I chose to ignore them.
Wow. Well, so so you said he did 20 years in Angola.
Right.
Okay. All right. So how long were y'all married?
7 years, but 5 of those years I was in active addiction.
Okay. So the following, so 2 years then you were sober.
Actually, not even for that full year I was sober. Um, but it didn't get, to that point until about 2 years in, until to where I was just out there, just accepted it and was like, you know what, this is just how it's gonna be.
So I'm guessing how far did you go to go get drugs? Like how what was the furthest length that you had to go?